Today, we're ranking every major machine gun of World War II, from the jam-prone disasters that got crews killed to the ones so terrifying soldiers still fear its sound to this day.
D tier, worst tier, the ones that let you down when it mattered most. Rank 12, WW2, Italy. Let's start at the bottom, and I mean rock bottom. Picture this, it's 1941, North Africa. The desert sun is baking the ground at 50 degrees. You're an Italian soldier, dug in, the British are advancing, and your machine gun decides, now is a good time to jam. Meet the WW2. On paper, a reasonable light machine gun. In reality, one of the most infuriating weapons ever handed to a fighting man. Here's what made it genuinely miserable. The Breda didn't feed from a detachable box magazine like a sensible weapon. It fed from a fixed, hinged magazine, 20 rounds, that you had to manually load with a stripper clip while the weapon was hot, in the desert, with sand in everything. But wait, it gets worse. The designers, in their infinite wisdom, decided the cartridge needed to be oiled before it entered the chamber. Yes, the gun came with its own oiling mechanism, because an already slow reload process clearly needed more steps. Oiled cartridges in desert sand. You can probably imagine what happened next. Sand stuck to every round. Rounds jammed. Men died. The WW2 is proof that elegant engineering on a drawing board means absolutely nothing on a battlefield.
Rank 11, Type 11 Light Machine Gun, Japan. Moving from Italy to Japan, and the Japanese Type 11 has a story that, honestly, deserves some sympathy. Because the thinking behind it wasn't stupid. The execution just collapsed under reality. The Type 11, introduced in 1922, was designed with a clever idea. Used the same ammunition as the standard infantry rifle. No special belts, no separate logistics chain. Just grab rifle rounds from any soldier next to you and keep firing. Smart, right? The problem was the hopper feed system. Picture a funnel sitting on the side of the gun where you literally dump in loose cartridge clips. Sounds convenient. But this hopper was open to the world, to rain, to mud, to the jungle humidity of the Pacific. Japanese soldiers fighting in China, the Philippines, and the Pacific Islands found that their Type 11 was reliable under one condition: perfect conditions. And war famously offers 0 perfect conditions. The low cyclic rate, about 500 rounds per minute, wasn't terrible, but between the feeding problems and the complex mechanism that required careful, gentle handling, this was a weapon that asked too much of soldiers who were already exhausted and operating in some of the harshest environments on Earth. Japan eventually replaced it, which tells you everything you need to know.
C tier, bad tier. They worked, barely. Rank 10, Citellaro M1924/29, France. France entered World War II with the Citellaro, a light machine gun that was genuinely decent in the 1930s. 25-round magazine, top-mounted, firing 7.5mm rounds at about 500 RPM. Ergonomically strange, but functional. The problem wasn't really the gun. It was the context. By 1940, the Wehrmacht was moving faster than anyone had anticipated. French doctrine relied on methodical, fortified defense. The Citellaro was a weapon designed for a war France expected to fight, not the blitzkrieg that actually arrived. In 6 weeks, France fell. The Citellaro ended up in German warehouses, used by occupation forces, handed to collaborator militias. It's a weapon that became famous mostly for falling in the wrong hands. Competent, outclassed by events. Tragic, in a way.
Rank 9, Bren gun, Britain. Now, here's where this ranking is going to make some people furious. And good, you should be a little angry. It means you care. The Bren is beloved. It is iconic. Ask any British veteran of World War II about the Bren, and their eyes light up. Reliable, accurate, simple to maintain, the Bren was genuinely a fine weapon. So why isn't it higher? Because the Bren had one fundamental limitation that crippled it as a machine gun, a 30-round curved magazine feeding from the top. Sounds fine. But a true machine gun needs sustained fire, suppression, keeping enemy heads down for extended periods. And 30 rounds, gone in about 3 seconds of full auto, meant your gunner was reloading constantly. The Germans, as we'll get to shortly, solved this with belt feed. The Bren did not. The result was a weapon that excelled as an automatic rifle in the hands of a trained crew, but could never truly dominate the sustained fire role the way its German counterparts could. The British knew this, by the way. They tried to compensate with sheer numbers of Brens per section. That helped, but it doesn't change the fundamental math. Legendary reputation,
Real limitation.
B tier, mid-tier, solid, dependable, did the job. Rank 8, Degtyaryov DP-28, Soviet Union. If the Bren is the beloved British gentleman, the DP-28 is the hard-working Soviet workhorse who never complains and never quits. Introduced in 1928, the DP-28 fed from a distinctive flat, pan-shaped drum magazine that sat on top of the receiver, 47 rounds. Soldiers called it the record player because of how it looked. That magazine gave it a real advantage over the Bren, more rounds before reloading. The DP-28 fired about 550 rounds per minute, was simple enough that a moderately trained soldier could strip and reassemble it under stress, and it worked in the Russian winter, which, if you know anything about World War II, was a condition that broke most weapons. It had weaknesses. The bipod was attached at the muzzle, which affected accuracy during sustained fire. The recoil spring sat under the barrel and could weaken from heat. And the pan magazine, while offering more capacity than the Bren, was slower to change than a box magazine. But ask a Soviet infantryman at Stalingrad what he thought of his DP-28, and the answer was probably unprintable in the best possible way. Rank 7, M1919 Browning, United States. John Moses Browning designed more weapons that shaped modern warfare than almost any other human being in history. The M1919 is one of his more underappreciated masterpieces, overshadowed by its own family members. The M1919A4 was the medium machine gun that American forces used everywhere, mounted on jeeps, on tanks, on fixed emplacements, in aircraft. Belt-fed, 30 caliber, reliable, and putting out 400 to 600 rounds per minute. It was heavy. At about 31 pounds without the tripod, the M1919 was not something you moved quickly, and that weight defined its role. This was a set-piece weapon. You picked your ground, you emplaced it, and then you dominated that ground. American GIs from Normandy to the Pacific knew the M1919 as something between a comfort and a burden. Comforting when it was yours, a terrifying problem when it was pointed at you. Dependable, not glamorous. Exactly what it needed to be.
Rank 6, the Vickers, Britain. Speaking of dependable, the Vickers, a weapon so reliable that British forces used it from World War I all the way through to the 1960s. That's not a typo. The Vickers was a heavy, water-cooled machine gun that could maintain sustained fire for extraordinary periods without overheating, because the water jacket around the barrel essentially solved the heat problem that plagued every air-cooled weapon. At Gallipoli in World War I, a Vickers team reportedly fired 1 million rounds over 12 hours. 1 million rounds. The gun kept going. In World War II, the Vickers was aging. It was heavy, complex, required a full crew, and lacked the tactical mobility that modern war demanded. But as a defensive weapon, on fixed positions, on ships, on fortified lines, nothing matched its endurance. Old, heavy, almost indestructible.
A tier, good tier, elite weapons that change the fight. Rank 5, DSHK, Soviet Union. We need to talk about the heavy side of this ranking, and the Soviet DSHK is where things get serious. The DSHK, affectionately called the Dushka by Soviet troops, meaning sweetie, was a 12.7mm heavy machine gun that entered service in 1938. This was not a weapon for suppression. This was a weapon for destruction. Anti-aircraft, anti-vehicle, anti-emplacement, anti-anything that moved, the DSHK's heavy rounds punched through cover that infantry machine guns couldn't touch. Mounted on T-34 tanks, on naval vessels, on armored cars, it gave Soviet forces a heavy fire option that the Germans genuinely respected. The DSHK wasn't subtle. It was the Soviet answer to a simple question: what if we made the machine gun angrier? The answer worked.
Rank 4, Browning M2HB, United States. And here is the gun that answers the same question, but arguably does it better. M2, Ma-Deuce. Half an inch of bullet, up to 850 rounds per minute. A weapon so effective that it has been in continuous service since 1933, and the United States military still uses it today. In World War II, the M2 was everywhere American power projected itself. On Sherman tanks, on PT boats, on B-17 bombers in quad mounts that turned the sky into a wall of lead. On landing craft at Normandy, German soldiers developed a specific fear of American vehicles precisely because of the M2 mounted on the range, the penetration, the sheer authority of that half-inch round. It made Allied vehicle crews feel powerful in a way that smaller caliber weapons simply couldn't. Browning designed this weapon in the 1930s. Engineers have been trying to replace it for decades. They keep failing, because you cannot improve on something that is already exactly right.
S tier, best tier, the machine guns that defined World War II. Rank 3, MG-34, Germany. Now we enter German territory, And this is where World War II machine gun history gets genuinely revolutionary. The MG-34, introduced in 1934, was the weapon that invented a concept, the general-purpose machine gun. Before the MG-34, armies had light machine guns for infantry and heavy machine guns for fixed positions. The Germans said, what if one weapon did both? The MG-34 was belt-fed, air-cooled, and could be fired from a bipod as a light machine gun or mounted on a tripod as a sustained fire weapon. The barrel was designed to be changed rapidly. A trained crew could swap a hot barrel in seconds, solving the overheating problem that plagued other designs. Rate of fire, 800 to 900 rounds per minute. At that speed, the MG-34 didn't sound like a machine gun. It sounded like a zipper. Allied soldiers called German machine guns Hitler's buzzsaw, and the MG-34 is where that nickname was born. Every NATO country that adopted the GPMG concept after World War II, including the weapon that replaced the Bren, including the American M60, was following the blueprint that Germany wrote with the MG-34. There was one problem. The MG-34 was expensive, complex to manufacture. Tight tolerances meant it struggled in extreme cold and mud, and as the war escalated, Germany needed something they could build faster.
Rank 2, VZ.26/VZ.30, Czechoslovakia. This one deserves a moment of recognition that it rarely gets. The Czechoslovak VZ.26 and its slightly improved sibling, the VZ.30, was one of the most influential machine guns ever made. It directly inspired the Bren. It was exported across the world. And when Germany occupied Czechoslovakia in 1939, the Wehrmacht used captured ZBs throughout the war. What made the ZB remarkable was its engineering philosophy, simplicity and reliability above all else. The tilting bolt system was robust. The gun functioned in conditions that jammed its competitors. And the quick change barrel, genuinely quick, faster than most contemporaries, gave it sustained fire capability that light machine guns rarely had. The tragedy of the ZB is that Czechoslovakia was overrun before its full potential was ever realized. Its children, the Bren, the ZB-53 medium machine gun, went on to serve in armies around the world. The original, in some ways, was the best.
Rank 1, MG-42, Germany, the greatest. There is no debate. There has never been a debate. The MG-42 is the greatest machine gun of World War II and one of the greatest firearms ever manufactured. Let me tell you the moment it announced itself. They were not prepared for the MG-42. The MG-42 fired at 1,200 to 1,500 rounds per minute. The individual shots blurred into a single continuous mechanical scream. American medics began seeing a new kind of psychological trauma, men who weren't wounded but couldn't stop shaking after hearing it. The U.S. Army actually issued a training pamphlet. It said roughly, the MG-42 sounds more frightening than it is. Do not panic when you hear it. The fact that they had to publish this pamphlet tells you everything. But the MG-42 wasn't just psychological warfare. The engineering behind it was a masterpiece of wartime innovation. The MG-42 used stamped metal components, not machined parts. Manufacturing time dropped dramatically, costs dropped dramatically, and yet the weapon that came off the line was more reliable, more robust, and more devastating than what it replaced.
The barrel change system, the feature that made sustained fire possible, was redesigned to be even faster than the MG-34. A trained crew could swap a barrel in under 10 seconds. The gun never had to stop for long. The belt feed system was smooth and reliable in mud, in snow, in desert heat. The bipod was sturdy. The tripod mount, the Lafette 42, turned the weapon into a precision sustained fire system capable of indirect fire at ranges exceeding a kilometer. It didn't just win its category, it invented the category that every machine gun since has been measured against. The greatest machine gun of World War II. And it isn't close.
If you liked this video, I'm sure you'll like this one too. Subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Our channel is small, so we are replying every comment below. Comment any suggestion for future videos. Thanks for watching.